think that's it.
There it goes.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to DenverScript. Sorry that we're getting started a little late. Sorry about all the things that happened, but here we are back again. It is February 222 Tuesday, I believe, and that wasn't a stutter. It's actually just a bunch of twos on a Tuesday. But yeah, happy that you're here. It might snow again today, but that's not why we're virtual. COVID, hooray. Good stuff.
COVID snow.
Yeah. Let me do some screen sharing. Going to assume that everybody can see that.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome to DenverScript. Shoot. I guess this is the order that we're going in. We don't even have a schedule anymore. But if you have any job announcements, any small number of you, feel free to throw them in the chat, and then we will be sure to share those out on the meetup page, hopefully to allow people to link up with you. This all seems out of order, but hey, let's go for it. So DenverScript is an open collective. So that means that if you want to, write some things off on your taxes, give us money so that we can continue to, hold these presentations, eventually go back to in person and have money for food, maybe stickers and other swag type of things like that. Big shout out to Garrett Dawson here. He has been contributing for, I don't know, 2 to 3 years. He's been giving us a solid $5 a month. So thank you very much, Garrett. And if you are interested, opencollective.com/DenverScript. Easy as that.
Apparently nobody heard this slide last month.
So yes, we are always on the lookout for speakers. So if you have anything that you've kind of worked on that you're interested in sharing out with other people that will understand it or appreciate it, if you work at a place where somebody's like always sharing like little nuggets of knowledge, please send them our way. So Guillermo, myself, or Matt, we would love to chat with them. We do have an intake form where you can kind of submit your talk. If you go to DenverScript.com, there's a link there that will allow you to find that form. We'll get it. We'll chat with you. I mean, there's 8 of us here. So it's going to be kind of silly, but like if you are an entry level engineer or like first few years of your like career, this is a great way to start, getting to know other people in the area, in the industry. Like sharing what you know. You can do a short talk, 8 minutes. All you got to do is commit to 8 minutes. That's super easy. Guillermo, Matt, or myself, if you have questions or just want to run through it, we'll get on a call with you and run through it, discuss the idea, whatever it might be. So don't be afraid. This is how I started. I have never moved past an 8-minute talk, and I don't think I ever will. Because honestly, 20 minutes just seems like way too long of a commitment, especially for something, like this. So please, please, please submit your ideas for talks because we would love to have you. Guillermo, do you want to take this one?
Sure. This is the one that Mike normally does. So code of conduct. We put this together as like usually, like Mike always says, is a little more relevant when we're in person, but still a good thing to keep in mind as it's kind of like the vibe that we try and keep here at the meetup. First one for Bill and Ted fans out there, be excellent to each other. Let's just like first rule, most important, just be nice to each other. Let's all help each other out. When we're having conversations, again, more when we're in person, but be inclusive, invite each other to chat. When we do go back to in person, do the Pac-Man rule. And if you're standing talking in your group, leave a little wedge open for somebody to easily walk in and join your conversation. And then the biggest one is to close this out here is no statement questions. The presenters who put the stuff together, and tonight it's Mike and I. You guys better be nice to Mike and I. But the presenters put the stuff together, take time, to put these things together and research and put together these topics. So don't be that guy. Don't be saying like, whoa, yeah, that's really interesting. But here's what we did, or here's how we solved it, or this is what I think. No one cares what you think. If you want to ask a question, that's cool. But if you have a thought like that you want to share, maybe submit a talk, and then we'll ask somebody to not be that guy during your talk. So let's be respectful to people for the time they put together for their presentations. Constructive and interesting questions are welcome, but no statement questions, please. If you're curious about our full code of conduct, you can find it at DenverScript.com. And yeah, just be nice to each other. Rule number 1.
All right. Now I think we're going to,
JavaScript Plan.
Yep. That was from last month. Yeah. So we're going to jump into what's going on in JS land.
Cool. And then from there it goes straight to the first talk, right? So I could probably just screen share through both of them if you want.
Oh, you want to do that?
Well, that way, I can just do the JS land, and then from there I'll just kick off the talk. So that works for you. So share screen. Oh, host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Oh my God.
Is there a way that you can?
I do that every time I do a Zoom call. You just got to click on, I think it's on your screen, you should have share screen, a little widget. And if you click on that, it should allow you to change your settings. Little up arrow. You see it?
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, every time. It's always reset.
Let's try again. Let me know when it's set.
Okay, there we go.
Here we go. Hey, look at that.
Thank you, Chris.
Saved the day. All right.
You got it.
So what's going on in JavaScript land? Okay, so you guys should hopefully see my JS land Google Doc. Is that what you guys are looking at?
Yep.
Cool. So every month we talk about what's going on in JavaScript land. We try and talk about the new stuff going on, and we share things that we're excited about, and we like it when you share with us some stuff that you're excited about. Normally get us kicked off. What we do is actually great. Chrome used to release new versions of Google and therefore DevTools every 6 weeks. But they realized that was annoying for our presentation schedule. So now they're releasing once a month, which is perfect because then we have a new DevTools to talk about every time. So what I get excited about is the new DevTools stuff. And so I'd like to show you guys what I'm excited about that, and then we'll see what you guys are up to. So Chrome 98 is out. As always, we have links to the highlights video, which will go through code examples and they talk through it. And then the release notes, if you prefer reading the documentation. All of this stuff that we're going to write here, we're going to put in the comments section of today's meetup. So don't feel like you have to jot it all down or visually try and get all of the links. And usually what we'll do here is Mike will capture kind of like a high level and put in some interesting little anecdotes, some of them not safe for work. And then afterwards, we'll actually go and look for some additional links and stuff to put onto there. So let's talk a little bit about Chrome 98. So here's what I'm really excited about. The first one I think is like so cool is last month we talked about, it might have been last month or the month before, we talked about this new changes tab. And let me show you what that looks like. So if I open up DevTools, give me 1 second, let me bring it over here. Okay, so I open up DevTools here. They added this, this is what I love about the remote meetup. So it's so easy to just screen share and everybody just sees what you're seeing. So what they showed last month was, if you guys aren't familiar, you can come to here in the console, go to the little 3 dots here, and then you go to changes. And then now, I don't know about you guys, but this happens to me all the time where like you'll come in and like, let's say you'll grab like, I don't know, this ID here, perfect. Let's say you like go here and this left is 0 pixels and I change it to like 3. And then I'll come to like here. Oh, why is this? Let me pick a better page. You might not like it on here. Let's do it on this page than I was doing it on before. Let's try again. Here we go. Close that. Open up my console again. Come on, buddy. Help me out here. What's going on here? Oh, that is the console. What an idiot. Okay, so let's go to elements. Cool. We'll clear this. We'll go to changes. Sweet. So now, if I come to look at this, let's go to this class here. Cool. Like padding top is like 45 pixels. So let's increase that a little bit. It's like 48 pixels. And then let's say this other thing here, this class backdrop. I don't know what any of these things are doing. I'll change like the top a little bit, and let's change the width a little bit. And so how cool is this? As you're making the changes, like, and you're modifying the things on your page that you're doing, I don't know about you guys, but like sometimes, especially when you're drilling into these like DOM trees and you're going like several layers deep, and you changed a parent and then a child and some sibling somewhere, and then you're like, and then you go and you thought you captured it all and you pasted it, and then we refresh it, it's like, oh, damn it, I forgot to do the thing for the third child who was a sibling of this other thing. And so here, just like as if it was like a PR that you're doing, it shows you all the changes that you've done. So like for me, I thought this is just the coolest freaking thing I've seen from DevTools in a while, to be able to like track all the changes that you're doing. So previously when they released this, it wasn't as helpful. It was kind of all like inlined and really hard to read, but they've now added this really nice sort of diff tool that shows you exactly what it was, what you changed it to. And so you can use it as a nice little checklist as you're going through and then moving to code the changes you did in flight. So I thought that was really cool. I wanted to share that with you guys. What else? Yeah, exactly. What else? Oh, okay, so yeah, the other thing I introduced last month was this notion of the recorder panel, where basically what you can do is you can pull up your site and you can kind of do like a live demo of your site, but with the actual code that's running being tracked in the background as well. And you can click on different things, say, okay, load the page, click on this button, scroll down to here, click on this other thing. And then you can save those steps and have it automatically run. The problem was that they were seeing was that for things that take longer to load, you know, how, you know, classic stuff that you see when you're running functionality tests, right? Where if your little bot clicks too quickly before the elements on the screen, you'll get like an error or whatever else. So now they've made the timeout something that you can modify in that recorder panel. So when you're doing these kinds of things, you can make it the timeout that you think is more appropriate. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with BF Cache. I hadn't heard too much about it, but it's basically this new thing in Chrome that's BF stands for backwards forwards. It's a backwards forwards cache. So the idea being that if what Chrome is now starting to do, which is really clever, especially for devices that are on their low, you know, horsepower with their RAM or on poor connectivity, what they're trying to do now is for pages in the history of Chrome, they try to cache the page that you were at before. So when you use the back and forward buttons on your browser, it just pulls up quickly a cached version of it versus having to reload the whole thing every time. So sort of like, you can do sort of like a virtual representation on both sides of the page that you're on of the last thing and the next thing, you know, if you're going backwards and forwards. So anyway, so since it's relatively new and they're trying to push that way, there's now a BF Cache test that you can do for your page. And in the video and in the notes, they show exactly how to do that. But you can come to it, run it, and then similar to how Lighthouse gives you all these reports on the different metrics about your page, it gives you like a BF Cache rating and lets you know how your page is doing relative to this backwards forwards caching. And then if it's not working, gives you some hints as to why it's not working currently with that. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then finally, this one's just sort of a nice to have. They've been adding for, I was going to show an example, but I'm not sure if that page is using it. If you guys have seen, we talked about this a few months back. Now, when you're looking at something that has flex properties, you can actually click on it. You can actually click on it, and there's a visual tool you can click for like what's the different property attributes that you want to assign for Flexbox, and it's cool because you can visually see them. And so they've now added for row reverse and column reverse as well. So that's what I'm excited about. We have a couple of other things here. Mike, are these yours? You want to talk about these?
Yeah, I think that these were things that just came up, at least the first one, these flowcharts in GitHub Markdown. If you just click through that link,
oh, sure.
We can hopefully just see what it looks like. And it seems kind of cool. So if you do your blog or anything like that, or if you need to, do like a flow chart, or like a kind of like a state machine type of thing, like, and you want to do it in Markdown, here you go. Mermaid allows you to do that. So kind of a neat thing. I was, just interested in it as like, hey, maybe eventually if I get to the point that I need to write a blog that involves a flow chart, Mermaid will be the thing. So yeah, just kind of like a cool thing. And then the other one, the next one,
Oh,
was
yeah,
like
sorry.
international list formats. Yeah, I think that I saw this maybe just on Twitter. And this seems kind of new, or at least it was new to me. So instead of, I think, having to, like join your array and say like, if it's the final index, then like prepend and, to it or whatever it might be. Now it allows you to just use whatever the international format is for your locale, or you can set the locale, and it will give you just the list joined correctly, which is pretty cool. Don't know how applicable it is. It's not applicable to anything that I do, but hey, if you need it, now you have it.
That's neat. And I like how they use the Oxford comma. Makes me happy.
I'm sure that's going to be contentious at some point in the future.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure that they're going to probably do a thing where you have like a flag that you could do like type, and it'll be like conjunction dash, ox off or something. Cool. Sweet. Thanks, man. So what are you guys excited about? And like we always say, it's gonna be as high level as you like. It could be like software development changes. It could be JavaScript changes. It could be something coming out in a framework that you use, or it doesn't have to be new at all. These high five moments. It could just be something that you were working on that you discovered. Like for example, Mike was just heard about this, and it's in this case it's relatively new, but it doesn't have to be. It could be something you're just like excited about, a new framework, or even just like there was a gnarly bug that you were working on and you finally figured it out, and you're in a safe space with friends that'll actually appreciate it, because maybe your other friends or partner or partners wouldn't understand or appreciate. So what are you guys excited about? I know there's not a lot of us here today, so let's try and get a few, and just go ahead and unmute and let us know what you guys are pumped about, or you can put in the chat too.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I had a couple. One is learning a little bit with Node and async await. I was building a whole REST API where I was just sending back promises and was not awaiting any of them. So that was just a little bug where it was I was building test cases for the API and figured out that all of those test cases were returning promises and I wasn't doing anything with them. So as soon as I figured that out, that was just an exciting little moment and everything ran properly. But yeah, async await, fun stuff to kind of wrap my head around. And the other one is working with this one for a React position that I was going for, but I wanted to just deep dive some docs, and I found out that they actually have brand new documentation. It's beta.reactjs.org. They are working on putting it live, and it is just so much better than what they currently have.
That's awesome. And then going to the first one, when you're working on the async await stuff, this is kind of somewhere it's great, right? We're like, this is why we like talking about these things, because like for some of us, like we've been doing it for a while, and some people haven't done it at all, and you're like right now, like in that process where you're learning it. When you were going through the async await stuff, did you were there any tools or docs or lessons or materials that you found particularly useful in wrapping your head around it that you'd recommend?
Oh, that's a great question.
If you don't have
Let me think about that. Yeah,
yeah.
I might throw something in the chat, but I'd say the biggest thing for me was just like leaning on my IDE really aggressively, and like the fact that I'm working with test cases instead of just like making the code allowed me to see if just kind of step through everything and see where like it was just as easy as seeing that a promise was being returned from from a function that I was calling. And as soon as I saw that, I realized everything in here needs to be async await. And as soon as I did that, I was able to work with it. But I'll try to think about kind of where I looked when I had that problem, because I'm sure that there was probably another step in there I'm not thinking of.
Sweet. Yeah, if you can throw it in the chat, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so that's a perfect example. Like two things that, actually it's a good example of both. One of them is something that's been around for a while that Chris just started working with, and another one is like a new thing that's about to come out that looks like it's gonna be pretty cool. So why don't we do a couple more? What are you guys excited about? Come on. If we do two, we can move on, I promise. Let's get two. Anything at all that you're excited about. guys?
You can type it, Jeff.
Oh yeah, Jeff, you're muted. But that was a practice run. Now you're gonna nail it on the delivery here.
Folks, I just,
Oh, okay.
Oh, excuse me.
Vivian, go ahead, and then Jeff can go after.
I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I know that you really wanted me to come up with something awesome, and I really wish I could. You know, the honest truth is I've been tied up in legacy maintenance stuff, and that's why I'm here. I'm afraid of falling out of the loop. So I just want you to know I'm here, I'm listening, and I wish I had a good story to tell you this time, and hopefully I will before too long.
No problem. That still counts. You're working through it. Jeff, did you have something you wanted to share? If you put it in the chat, I'm not seeing it. I don't know. You seem very happy. So I mean, if you want to unmute, then let us know. Oh, you can't unmute? Oh no.
Jeff did put it in chat. He says lots of job searching with recruiters. It's like a full-time job, but I don't get paid.
Yeah.
Been there.
Hey, well, and that being said, and don't feel pressure like you have to drop it in right now, but that being said, if there's resources that you found in your preparation for your job search, you know, like interview tools that you've come across, or if it's like some recruiters that you particularly liked, you know, let us know. These are all things where, like, if you've had to do a lot of this heavy lifting on your own, then let's share it with some other people that might come, you know, and could learn from the stuff you've already done. So appreciate it. Cool. Do we have any more? All right. Well, it's a smaller group, so we'll let them off the hook with just a few this time. But yeah, JavaScript plan. Okay. So let's, I guess let's go ahead and you want to just move on to the first talk, Mike? Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do it. You just want to keep control?
Yeah, I just do that, and now we're in it. So cool. Let's see. Yeah, did you guys see that full screen now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So intro to recursion. I thought this would be an interesting topic for us to talk about because it's one of those things where, especially if you're a newer developer, recursion, the first time that you hear it and the first time that you work with it is a little bit mind-bending to kind of wrap your head around. But then once you understand it, it's actually a really elegant and useful tool. And as you, if you decide to start messing around with functional programming languages, or even if you decide to try and write JavaScript in a more functional way, recursion is something that you would be using all the time. And so I've been kind of messing around and writing a bit of Haskell these days. And so it's one of those things where, like, yeah, you kind of like try and like hurt your brain to get it once, and then it becomes a thing that you're using constantly. So with that, since it's available in JavaScript but not used as often, I thought it'd be kind of cool if we did a quick talk on an introduction to what recursion is. And then so for some of you that find it interesting, you can kind of follow up and do some homework on your own. But let's go ahead and jump in. So you'll, if you don't know what recursion is, you'll understand my little baby Ouroboros here when we get to the end of it. So there we go. Oh, that one way too far. Okay, so what is recursion? So this is from Geeks for Geeks. And recursion is basically the process in which a function calls itself directly or indirectly. And then, you know, kind of, even this definition sounds kind of recursive. The process is called recursion, and a corresponding function is called a recursive function. So that's sort of how you would phrase it. And if that doesn't totally make sense, then let's look at this as like a simple example. Let's say I'm doing a presentation like today, right? And so I have this function called handle slide, and it'll take whatever the next slide is, right? And so if the next slide is the last slide of the presentation, then I'm just done, right? But here's where it gets interesting with recursion. If it's not the last slide, then let's say I go blah, 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 I make up some stuff about JavaScript, okay. And then we'll say, let's get this next slide to like turn the page to the next slide and get the following slide. And so then we see here that I'm going to call handle slide again, the function that we're already inside of. I'm going to call it again now with this following slide. And then what will happen is this following slide is going to drop into this same flow. Following slide will now, you know, be called next slide. It'll come into here. If it's the last slide, then we're all done. If it's not, then I'm going to talk about JavaScript a little bit more, check on the next one, and then run it again. And so then that's where sort of like this little guy comes in, right? Where it's sort of like, it's, you know, you kind of keep looping through it. And then with recursion, you basically have it where you have a termination state, and then otherwise you do some work, and then you can call the same function that kicked you off over again until you get to the end of that loop. So yeah, so demo time. Let's do some live code. I'm a big fan of live coding. So let's look at some examples of how we can do this together. So if I open up my DevTools again, and by the way, so I'm a huge fan of DevTools. That's why I talk about it every month. If you ever want to do like some code snippets and you want to sort of see some live feedback and you don't want to go through like the IDE process or text editing process, whatever, you can actually come to DevTools and go to sources and then click on, normally the sources are the page, but if you go to files, if you go to snippets, you can make little like JavaScript snippets that are all valid JavaScript, and then you can just play them and have it run like real code for you. So let's do a really simple example of recursion, and we're going to make a little function here called count to 100. And so count to 100 is going to take some number, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to want to print to the console, as we count up to 100. So what we can do is we can say like if number, I always forget how to do this, right? It's is it type of number is string, right? Does that make sense? Let's see if that's right. Go to console. Yeah, great. So if the type of number is a string, that's not what I want to do. I'm already thinking ahead for the next problem. If the number is 100, then we've made it up to 100. You always want to start with your termination case, right? Like, because you're going to be calling it again. So you want to think about, how am I going to end this thing? That's always the way that you want to start your thinking. We're trying to count to 100. If we've made it to 100, we can say console.log. Oh, come on. Yay, we made it to, and then let's just drop the number in so we know that we're not cheating. We made it to 100, okay? So that's when we get there and we're all done. But if for any other reason, we know that we're not quite at 100 yet, right? So what we're gonna wanna do is, if that's not the case, let's console.log and say, oops, we are not quite there yet. Only at, and let's drop in the number here. Let's try again. And so then what we'll do is, okay, so we're not quite there yet. And then here, similar to the example about the presentation thing, the trick now is what we'll do is we're inside of count to 100. Let's go ahead and call count to 100 again. And we're gonna pass num plus 1. And so the idea being, let's say we start, and then here, if we wanna call this, we can just do count to 100, start it at 1. And then if you think about it, what will happen is we started at 1, we're gonna drop in here, num will be 1. Is num into 100? No. So we're gonna drop in here, say, oops, we're not quite there yet. Add 1 to num, so now we're doing it at 2. So over here again, is to 100? No. So add 1 more, do it at 3, and we'll keep looping around like that until we finally hit 100, and that'll be a way that we can count to 100. So let's do this, and let's go ahead and run our little snippet. And then, yeah, so there we go. So we can see here, starting all the way at 1. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Not quite there yet. Until we reach our termination condition, we say, yeah, we made it to 100. So there's a really, really simple example for you of recursion of probably one of the simplest ways you can do of it calling itself, looping around, hitting the termination condition and finishing. But this is basically just like a glorified like while loop or something like that, right? Or even a for loop. Where recursion really gets interesting and it's really cool is when you start doing things like, it's really, really good at things like tree traversal, especially when it's a tree that is like a heterogeneous structure where you don't know how deep it's going to be, right? Like it could be like one fork of it could be like 1 layer deep, and then the other fork could be several layers deep. So this is heterogeneous. So let's say, for example, we have some tree here. And again, this is a very contrived example, but let's say we just have some tree. Can you guys see this? Okay, I should have asked in the last one. You guys see this? Okay, all right, sweet. So let's say we have some tree here. And the idea with this tree is that all the nodes are going to either be a string or they can be another object, which can have multiple other things. So we see here, for example, our sum tree is an object. The sum key has the word thing. Another is an object which has 2 keys, set and with. Set is a string, but with is also another object. And that has 2 keys, sum and other. Other is a string, but sum is another object again, and it has a key called things, right? So let's say what we wanted to do was, we want to write a recursive function called find all the strings. Okay, so our goal here is we want to traverse through this whole tree. We want to find all the strings. And as we find them, we're going to push them into this strings array. For people that are fans of functional programming and purely functional languages, I already hear you. And I know that you're complaining that I am like taking this like hoisted variable and pushing things into it instead of having this come back in a cleanly, purely functional way. But for the sake of this exercise, it'll just make it easier for us to sort of see what we're doing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the work here inside of find all the strings. When it runs, we're going to pass it this tree, right, as our starting condition. And then when we're done with doing all of our work, we're gonna console log the array of all the strings and see what we ended up with, okay? So let's do similar to what we did before. We're gonna find all the strings. We have something coming in, but we don't know what it is, right? So as we said before, we always wanna start with our terminating condition. So if, and this is what I was doing before, I was already thinking ahead for this next one, type of something is a string, then in that case, we know that we've found a string. So all we need to do there is take strings dot push something, and we can safely assume that since something is a string, we have found a string, let's push it into there, okay? But where it gets more interesting, and this of course is a very happy path sort of thing. I know you, like Chris, you were just talking about testing. We are going under the assumption here that at any given time, this tree, the nodes are only ever a string or an object. So we're not doing any kind of like, rigidity here, right? In terms of, or rather robustness. So if it's not a string, we're going to just assume that it's an object. And then what we're going to do is we'll say, okay, so first let's grab all of the keys in that object so we know what we're dealing with. So we'll say the keys is just going to be object.keys of something, because we know something's going to be an object at this point. So now we have all of our keys, and let's do keys dot for each key, right? So now we have all the keys in the object, and what we want to do is for each one of those keys, so we think about here, for example, in another is a good example, it has like several keys here. For each one of them, we want to check, is it a string or is that also an object, and then do it again, right? So for each key, we can first, let's get, let me think about this for a second. We have the keys, oh yeah, so let's get the const next element is going to just be something with that key, right? So then for that next element, for every one of these next elements, we can then just call find all the strings of that next element, right? And if we think about what we're doing here, so let's take a step back and look at this again. Look at this tree as we're going through it. So here is some tree. We're going to find all the strings. When we pass some tree into here, first thing we're going to see is we're going to have this object, right? So first thing we're going to see is something a string? It's not. It's this object right here. So then what we're going to do is say, okay, let's grab all the keys off of that object, which is going to be some and another. And then for each of those, let's grab the corresponding element by just bracket notation of taking the key off of that element, and then find all the strings for each of these elements. So we're going to do it then for set and then with. So so set being our next element, when that gets dropped into here and we loop back around again, this something is now this, right? So something is going to be the string. Actually, yeah, it's going to be this one, the string thing. And then we have a string there, and then we'll loop around again, and we'll keep doing that and traverse through the tree. So let's see if we did it right. I'm going to clear this. Let's hit enter. Sweet. So yeah, so we can see here that in our tree of heterogeneous depth, where we didn't know what each one was at any given time, by doing this very simple recursive function, we were able to take our array of strings, and then we were able to push in thing of things, things, and stuff all got pushed into there without us knowing ahead of time what the depth of the tree was going to be, and just doing some very simple checking along the way. So very contrived example. And again, I know this can be kind of mind bending at first, but the last thing that I kind of want to like leave you guys with is that in all of these examples, the simplest one being this counter, and then more complex being the tree traversal, the best way to think about it is, okay, if there's a thing that I need to keep doing, but I don't know how far I need to go to find the answer, like I don't know what's the length or what's the count or the amount of time or anything like that. I know what the condition is when I should stop, but I don't know how long it might take me to get there, and I don't know what the path might be to get there. Recursion is usually a good tool for those kinds of situations. And when you start implementing recursion, it has to be a named function. You can't do it with anonymous functions because you have to tell it what to call again, right? And additionally, then once you've got your named function, first thing you want to do is think about what the termination condition is going to be. And then you want to think in the mindset of, okay, so if it didn't terminate, then I need to call the thing again. And how exactly am I going to call it again so that eventually it can end up at the termination condition? So yeah, so there's a simple example of recursion for you guys. I'll stop here. That's all I got. If I go back to my slideshow, all it just says is thanks. And then, so there's my little Ouroboros, little snake dragon thing eating its own tail. See, he grew up. He started off as a baby Boris, and then he became a happier, full-on Ouroboros at the end. So if you guys have any questions about whatever, I'm just Guillermo and Denver Devs. And also the examples we went through here, we'll post this slide deck as well in the comments. I posted these simple examples here of the ones that were actually running, so you can grab these and copy paste them if you want to mess around with them. And you can, play around with them and get your own examples in there too. But I'll stop for a second in case you guys have any questions. Any questions about any of that stuff?
Well, first of all, the first thing that I learned from this presentation is that that Chrome DevTools has that snippet mode. I had no idea that was hiding around there.
Yeah.
The other thing that came to mind though was do you know anything about which JavaScript browsers and runtime environments support tail call optimization? Because I know without tail call optimization, you can hit a Stack Overflow really quickly.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. And so what Vivian's referring to there is that, if you think about it, when you're going into this, like find all the strings and, and you get to here and you're like, oh, hold on, let's go for all of them and go in again. And then like, let's say this thing had been like 100 layers deep, then you go again, you go again, you go again. All that stuff is being held in memory until the final resolution happens, and it all bubbles its way back up to the top. And so if the programming language that you're using doesn't have some kind of an optimization, tail call optimization is one of them. In Haskell, they do lazy evaluation. So they only evaluate things at the moment that they're needed. So it's not holding all that in memory. I know Erlang, for example, has specific kinds of recursion you can call. Some of them are tail optimized, some are not. So yeah, that's just some research on the language that you're going to want to do to check. But yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know. Great question that made me think of another thing for people to know about, but I'm not sure off the top of my head what languages or frameworks or anything would do those kinds of optimizations in JavaScript.
And as long as we're talking about that, I think a really important point to add is that with tail call optimization, it has to be that the last thing that the JavaScript function does is call itself and return the value of that. I know it sounds really simple, but it's easy to get that wrong, because it's like if you're doing, say, like say an arithmetic something or another, where you recursively call the function and then add the number to the number that you had before. Well, that doesn't work. You can't say add a number to it and then return it. You have to immediately return it. It's just a really easy mistake to make. And I thought we may as well add that, as long as we're talking about, having the tail call recursion available.
Yeah, no, fair point. Appreciate it. Any other questions?
Jeff asked a question. Can you put a console log after the recursive call to see what happens?
Yeah. So yeah, like where were you thinking? I'm happy to. When you mean like after the recursive call, do you mean like for example,
Maybe
like
after
here?
line 28? Yeah.
Yeah. What are we trying to log for? So because we could do is like, yeah, what we could do is like this, like, right? Like let me see here. We could do like, this is the next element to check. And then, right? Something like this, maybe probably what you're thinking. So let's do it actually before it, so that we know what we're about to do. And so if we do it like this, then yeah, so we can see here that actually, and we could even do it this way. Let's do this. I'm glad you actually brought this up. I probably should have done this because I did it with the counter, but not with this one. So this is a string, time to add to the array. And then it would be something, right? So yeah, cool. So we do it like that. We see here when we're coming in, and actually we could do one more. We could do here. We could say this is an object, time to find the keys. And this is again something. Cool. Okay, so now when we do it, we'll see here as we step through it, the first thing is the object we passed. So we see there's an object trying to find the keys for something and then another, right? So then we loop back around again. And then the next thing that we're going to check is thing. Oh yeah, exactly. Right. We pull the thing off and it's just the string thing. So then when we get to looking at that, we say, this is a string. It's just the word thing. So we're going to add it. And then the other one is another, which is an object. We say, this is the next element, yeah. So we're going to check, yep, set of things and with, which is the object. And then we loop back around again. And so you can actually see sort of how it traverses through it in that way, the way that we talked about. Thanks, Jeff. That would have made my presentation way better. So thank you for pointing that out. But that's cool.
This was my favorite way of debugging recursion calls.
Yeah, good call. Because this way, yeah, you can see that it kind of goes through exactly the way that we had talked through it, where each step of the way you see where it opted out and then where it kind of went back in. And then now you know what you're dealing with. And then within that, you see how it opted out and went back in. For example, when we were doing the object of set of things, another object, we see that when we got to of things, that was a string. So we added it. And this with one was another object. So that one we're going to go. And then here we are with things that are in with. So yeah, cool. Any others? Sweet. Thanks, guys. So yeah, any questions, feel free to reach out on yeah, go ahead.
Actually, I did have one more question. As a web developer, recursion is not something that I use very often. I think the thing that I probably use it for most often is traversing the DOM, looking for something, you know, going in and out of different document object model structures. And I always want to ask you, since you gave a talk about recursion, what kind of situations do you find it useful in?
The biggest thing is something like this, where you're going through a tree of some shape, and you don't know how deep it is, and there are different kinds of nodes you might encounter. Like something that I did a while back for the last company I was working for was you're going to get some kind of a JSON object, and then that JSON object was going to represent like a directory structure of links that people can go to. And so at any level, you could either be looking at a clickable link or like a directory that would take you to the next level deep, and you didn't know which one you were looking at any given time. And so recursion was really helpful for that, because you can do this kind of logic and you go, okay, let me look at the next tier. And then you have this object just handles a tier, right? So you pass it and it says, let me look at the next tier. If it's a string, I want to make it a clickable like link element. If it's an object that's going to have some kind of a directory, I'm going to make it look like a clickable thing that's going to take me to the next tier. And then if somebody clicks on that next tier gets passed to the object. I write it to the function, and then that looks at the current tier and then looks at every entry in it and sees, is it a clickable string or another thing? And then for that one, we're able to tell the customer site, like, yeah, just give us however you would want to represent this in terms of whatever hierarchical structure you want in whatever kind of depth along the way. And recursion was perfect for that. So trees are really where it shines usually. Trees of unknown depths. Of which the DOM is a good example. Cool.
Yeah, I was just thinking, yeah, the DOM is a good example of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it literally is exactly what it is, right? But let's go ahead and stop it there, because it's supposed to be a 10-minute presentation. We've already a bunch of questions and stuff, which are good questions, but we still have to do Mike's chat. So let's do that. If you guys have any other questions, hit me up on DenverScript or on Denver Devs, and I'd be happy to chat with you more, because recursion it can be really fun and really elegant, but it'd be kind of hard to wrap your head around when you first start. So happy to help out any way I can. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thank you, Guillermo. Yeah, I had to do an interview one time where I had to traverse the DOM with recursion, and yeah, fortunately I had like reviewed it immediately before, so I was able to at least do somewhat well at the interview. I got the job, so I guess I did well enough. All right, hi everybody. I'm gonna talk about cookies. C is for cookies, and pretty much it was just the adventures that I learned in trying to create a cross-domain storage solution. Pretty pretty easy stuff once you know what to do. But in all honesty, it was pretty difficult to get started. So a few things about me. I'm Mike Frazier. I'm a software engineer at Evernow. I was a former high school science teacher. I like to skate and snowboard, do reading, music things. I don't know. This is something that I just copied from a previous slide deck. That's my Zodiac. So if you're interested, there you go. Maybe that'll tell you something about the way that I present or the things that I find interesting. Go for it, I guess. Read into it. My Twitter, @FrageGuy. If you want to find me on Denver Devs, I'm @Frazier. And I recently reskinned my blog, so please go and check that out, mikedoescoding.com. I have a post about recursion there. So Guillermo, you could have just read that and it would have been good.
Probably would have been better. Probably would have been better.
No, your presentation was great. But yeah, so that's me. Apparently I also like Weekend at Bernie's. So there we go. So to set some context about this, the way that this project started, my boss just, sent me a message that was like, hey, Mike, we're going to be splitting our marketing sites from our members' sites. One will be hosted on a subdomain of ours. We want a cookie to be available between the domains. And then just basically, you good with that? And that was it. So, of course, I'm like trying to prove myself. I just started this job and I'm like, yeah, of course, I'll figure this out. I don't know too much about cookies or cross domains or any of this stuff, but I'll figure it out. Don't even worry about it. And this was pretty much every check-in for a couple weeks. I was like, yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know that I'm doing it pretty well. I was just doing things, reading up on stuff. And what really happened was I just ended up in Stack Overflow search hell. I would be afraid to show you the search history for that time because it was literally just how to create cross-domain cookie, how to share cookie between domain and subdomain, domain set cookie for subdomain. What is a cookie? And just dumb things like that, because this is something that, cookies have been around forever, but somehow there's no agreed upon way of doing this or even a way to make it easy. At least that's what I found through all of this. So if you have other, experiences with this, please let me know, but we'll see kind of where I landed on this in just a moment. Yeah, and then at the end of the day, after just talking about cookies a whole bunch, I'm just slamming my head down. But I guess, let's actually discuss this, what is a cookie? And according to Wikipedia, the most trusted, reputable source that you can find on the internet, cookies are small blocks of data created by a web server or, your client while you're browsing a website. You put it on the computer or other device. They're put there, you can have more than one per website, and they might last for just a session, or you can have them last forever. Cookies are really, kind of useful for storing stateful types of information, such as, what's in your cart? Are you authenticated? What's your user preference? So if you really like, dark themed things, that's something that could be put into a cookie. The cookies are also kind of bad because they can track you across different websites and third-party cookies, all of that type of stuff. If you're, if your company does any type of business with the European Union, I'm sure that you had to learn about GDPR and all of that stuff. And it's this whole opt-out thing. We're not going to get into that because I don't know about it. That's about the extent that I know. But maybe that'll be a talk for the future, or if somebody else wants to give a talk about cookies and GDPR, that would be great too. You could do that. But yeah, so So we just, as web developers, we will use cookies to track users, like, preferences basically within our website that we have. So upon sign in, you might store a token that says like, hey, this person is authenticated and this cookie is good for 24 hours, 7 days, whatever it might be. And then when you're making your requests from the client to the server and the server to the client, you include those cookies. It's, just kind of a way to make sure that this person should be authenticated. And if the cookie is expired, you might have some code in there, some logic that would be like, hey, this cookie's expired. I'm going to kick you back to the login screen. And now you have to log in. You get a new cookie, lasts for 7 days. Great. So for cookies, the general structure that you have here is a name and a value, and then some optional attributes, and there's a bunch there. So secure is like if you're using HTTPS as your protocol, the expiry date, so how long will it last, the domain that you're setting this cookie for, and then there's a bunch of others, and I didn't include them. I'm mostly, at this point, mostly concerned about the domain one. But these are the general structure for it. I have a code example here that we'll look at. But if you set these directly through JavaScript, it's kind of a pain because it's like document.cookie is assigned this just kind of gross looking string that also has like name equals something, semicolon, value equals something, semicolon, secure equals true, it's kind of gross. So, there's probably an NPM package that does that, and I'll show you the NPM package that we're using here in just a second. But yeah, I think that just looking at an example is actually better. I don't know. I kind of like this one. This cat just body slamming this young child. I just watched this all day. All right, anyway, let's move on. So the setup for this, I'll be honest with you, this is just a dumb little Vite React application, just because that was, like the easiest sort of thing to do. I am using, it's called Cookie. So if you go to npm.com and search Cookie, or whatever NPM's actual website is, go to npm and search Cookie. This is what it's going to be. And yeah, kind of the last part, and this is more a note for myself, so maybe it should have been in the speaker's notes, but hey, welcome to how the sausage is made here. How do we get this to work in dev? Because localhost, believe it or not, is not like a real server. It's not going to behave. Clients don't necessarily like the way that localhost acts. So all of the things that we try to do won't necessarily work. Yeah, so let's just jump into that. Can I get some confirmation that you can see a code editor?
Yes.
All right, I see some
editor.
thumbs up. Yeah, so yeah, just this dumb little React app. Honestly, this is so stupid. There's like 5 buttons. So I'm just got like a button that's like set token cookie here. Let's actually take a look at it here. Set token cookie, set username cookie, set token cookie as cross domain, set username cookie as cross domain, and then clear all cookies. These are just the things that obviously you wouldn't have a button that sets the cookies, but just to kind of get the general idea of what we're trying to do here. So if I do set token cookie, hey, look at that. This is the token. I probably should have used underscores instead of spaces because of the way that this is, encoded, but whatever. So our domain is set for localhost. Do this one, bless you. Our username cookie, this is the username, and then I'll do these ones as well. So you can see, oh, wait, where'd the other ones go? So username with true, okay. And it should be X domain, still localhost. This one is also set to localhost and should be the cross domain one. And then we can clear them. But now I just want to kind of show you this sort of, this sort of thing. So when you're working with cookies, you can only have one cookie. Like the names have to be unique. So if I set my token cookie, and this is my value, and then if I set that same token cookie again, it replaces the value, right? So cookie names have to be unique if you're going to be constantly sort of resetting them. And like, hey, what if I want to see this as like an actual domain thing? Because I can't do localhost, whoops. I can't do like dev dot. I'm gonna be really mad if I can because, oh shit. I didn't test this earlier because this is not what I ended up at. But I think that this, this totally blows me away. This didn't happen earlier. This didn't happen 3 weeks ago when I was doing this. But anyway, let's just keep moving. We're gonna clear all these cookies because this is not the fun part. Wait, but it didn't. Whatever. Man, this sucks. This is weird. All right, anyway, so the real kind of moral of the story here is that if you need to get your local host to kind of behave like it's a real website, you're going to need to edit your Etsy posts. And if you're like me and you don't do a lot of like web, like, I don't even know what to call that, DevOpsy sort of stuff. I don't really do that. I kind of like just doing front end stuff. You're going to do this Etsy, ETC, or if you're, from academia, you might just call it etc. And then you do posts. I almost forgot what I was doing. Yeah, you're gonna need to do this as like the super user. Uh-oh, somebody's shaking their head no. This is like, last ditch effort. Apparently, if you just do dev.localhost, that also works. So, I mean, your mileage may vary, but this is what I did in order to get past this. Right. Sudo vi, because I actually want to edit this. So I need an editor. I'm going to do this through the Vim editor. So there we go. And then what you can do is this 127001. This is your local host. This is just where your server is running. So I just did www.localhost.com and then changing kind of that prefix to test.localhost.com. Now I should be able to go back to Chrome. I'm honestly pretty mad about that thing working the way that that it did. But here we go. So now I'm at localhost.com. I have no cookies. I'm going to set that token cookie, and then we'll set this one. And now we can see that the domain is www.localhost.com. I'm going to open up a new tab and go to test.localhost. We'll open up the same thing. And this one has no cookies. If I set those, this one is now set to test.localhost.com. So that's that's kind of be expected, right? We're setting it to only be available within this domain. So now if we clear this, I'm going to set a cross-domain cookie. So now this is just at .localhost.com. And if I go back here, now I have token cookies set. But because our domain is different, right? .localhost versus www.localhost, we get to kind of see that. But again, you ideally your application, your client would not end up in this sort of situation of like just willy-nilly setting cookies like that. Because ideally what we would have, or more realistically, is let's say that, yeah, on my test page, this is where I log in. So I'm going to, and this is, you know, like, I should have called this login, damn it. So this is my authentication server, whatever it might be. So I'm going to set that one to only be available there. Whatever false means. Oh, right, that's what it means. And then upon login, I want my username attribute to be available to any of my subdomains. So in that case, I'm going to set my username as a cross-domain one. And here it's now set to just .localhost. And if I go back right now to like my root domain here, if I refresh it, I have access to my username, but not the token. So again, like your mileage may vary with this in terms of like how you actually want to set this up. But in this case, my localhost.com only knows that I have a username. So if I need to include some type of avatar to say like, hey, this person is logged in, that's great. But I would not expect this particular site to be able to like actually authenticate the user. So there might not be any valuable information here. This might not be the account page or how you actually get to it. Instead, I would include some sort of link that goes back to test.localhost.com. That one has the cookie that I'm looking for that can, you know, go back to the server and say, hey, is this the right person that should be logged in? And if everything is good, show them their account page. If not, log them out, make them log in again, go through this whole sort of rigmarole again. Whew. This took me like 3 to 4 weeks to finally get to this point. And honestly, it felt pretty amazing when I got to the end of it, because I was just like, damn, I didn't know anything about domains, subdomains, or really cookies or how any of this works. And now it's like, oh wait, I'm eating up one of my slides because, hey, look, this is what I learned. All of these things, I did it for myself. So yeah, setting the domain key on the cookie, we can either create it as host only. So that's like when we saw that it was test.localhost.com, that is host only, or we can have it be available to any of the subdomains. And that's where we have just the .localhost.com. That one is available anywhere. But if you have like www or test. That is specifically for that one domain. You can make your local host act like a real server by updating your Etsy hosts. Whether that's a good idea or not, I don't know. I think that it can be a little bit dangerous if you don't really know what you're doing. It was on a work computer, so if I messed it up, I think they can just, you know, reflash it and it'll be okay. And now, you know, hopefully by doing this once, I've gotten to the point that I won't end up in Stack Overflow hell again, trying to figure out what's a cookie, what's the right specification. Do I actually need to know the old specification to understand the answer? And maybe one day I'll be able to answer this question on Stack Overflow. And, you know, contribute back to the general group. Thank you. And does anybody have questions? Ooh, there are some good questions in here. Jeff, I'm not sure about your third-party cookie question. I don't know how those necessarily work. Not off the top of my head, and I did not end up pursuing that line of thinking for this particular project. But if you want to talk about third-party cookies in like an upcoming talk, by all means, I'll send you the link that you can submit your idea. Oh, Jeff, were you shaking your head no when I didn't put the VI in my command? Okay. Thank you.
I appreciate this talk. I've never been this deep into the weeds with cookies before.
Yeah, yeah, like I said, it was just one of those things that I never really had to deal with because that was always left to somebody smarter. I'll put it that way. I just, like to make things look pretty, but not necessarily have to think about the web security, like the security side of it, or how are we tracking these particular things. So it was enjoyable. I'll put it that way.
Well, that kind of reminds me, I wouldn't necessarily say it was done by somebody, quote, smarter than me, but I remember back when I was a junior dev, I got myself transferred a couple thousand miles across the country, to work on a different project the same company was managing. And, the people they brought me into work with didn't know what I could or could not do. And it's like, they put something in front of me that I could have said, oh yeah, somebody more senior than me should do this, but it actually turned out to be a real growth opportunity. So, don't sell yourself short.
Well, thank you. That's a nice little boost of confidence there. Yeah, it was just one of those time. I think that there's always a little bit of that imposter syndrome with like any new sort of project, or if it's just like just outside of that scaffolding level of things that you're comfortable with. It's always like, I wish somebody else was handling this. Now I am that person, so I guess I can't complain.
It's like a non-technical manager came to me and said, hey, we have this project here. We had another person write some code for this, and it does A, B, and C. Can you add a button that they click here and have it do D, E, and F? And I'm like, okay, sure. Like, what was I going to say? No.
I mean, you could have, but yeah, might not have kept the job for that long.
Well, the funny thing is, I learned some months later that he had said the same thing to all these other guys who were more senior than me, and they all said no. So I ruffled some feathers there. It's like, I didn't know the backstory. It's like, he just asked me, like, can you do this? And I'm like, okay.
And Martin's last question here, can we use test.localhost technique to manufacture Amazon or Facebook cookies? Oh my goodness, that is such a good question, Martin. I don't know if that's actually possible. I think that there's something that blocks you from being able to do that. Like, I think that you can update your Etsy hosts to do that, but it might actually, I think that it'll resolve to the actual website. I think that would be another good thing to do, to check.
Well, I would guess that you can modify local hosts to make it do anything you want, but live production is going to be another matter.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know too much more beyond what what I've already presented, and I try not to be nefarious in what I do. Garrett would be a great person to talk about that, I think. What do you think, Guillermo?
Yeah, Garrett's made a career out of white hat stuff. That's like that's where he's at right now, is a white hat penetration testing startup.
Yeah. Any final questions about C is for cookies?
It's a great title for a talk.
That's what I spent most of the day working on, just the title. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. We'll be posting this out with the slides. I'll maybe make that into a small little gist or something and to share that with the slides. Yeah. Guillermo, any closing thoughts?
We'll see you guys all next month, hopefully in person.
Yeah.
Sweet. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Right, bye-bye.